Tony Engelberg.
Here.
Ray Curtin.
Here.
Lloyd Kernan.
Here.
Glenn Mitchell.
Here.
Pat Feeney. A.C. Allray.
Here.
Stacy Steckley.
Here.
Let's hold off on dealing with Pat's absence for a few minutes and see if he makes it in. I checked my email a minute or two ago and I did not see anything. So hopefully he's on his way. Moving on to agenda approval. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion by Lloyd, support by Stacy, to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to public comment for items on the agenda only. You are free to discuss what we're going to talk about as far as animals, but we also have a public hearing for that, so I would ask that you reserve comments on that subject until the public hearing, just to kind of keep things streamlined. But if anybody has anything for public comment, please feel free to step up to the microphone, state your name and address, and we'll give you a few minutes to talk. Tough crowd tonight. Hearing none, we will move on. The next item on the agenda is public hearings for Chapter 32 Zoning, Article 4 Supplementary Regulations, Section 32-145 Maintenance of Animals. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
I move that we open public hearing for Chapter 32 Zoning, Article 4 Supplementary Regulations, Section 32-145 Maintenance of Animals, in parentheses, chickens.
We have a motion by AC. Can I get some support?
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion by AC, support by Lloyd. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Before we get started, would John or Amy, anybody like to talk about what we've got going here today?
Sure, I can give a brief introduction, and and if anyone wants to add to it, please feel free to jump in. The township's been looking at their ordinances with respect to regulating the keeping of chickens. Recently, the village has also updated its ordinances to allow for the keeping of chickens in the township. I believe felt that having sort of unified regulations, consistent regulations, or at least compatible regulations with the village made a lot of sense, especially considering the rural nature and character of Holly Township. I believe the township felt that allowing a looser regulation for the keeping of chickens in the township made a lot of sense. So in response to that, they proposed a couple of amendments to the township's zoning ordinance. The first of which is that the keeping of chickens, there's no minimum lot size for the keeping of chickens in the AGRE district, the SR district, or the rural estate district. That's been eliminated in that.
Actually, this is from the meeting previous. In our previous meeting, we decided to eliminate this and just that regulation.
So that's the only proposed amendment. Is eliminating the minimum lot size in the AGRE, SR, and RE district.
Or Class 3 animals, being that Class 3 animals is rabbits as well. So we have a lot of parcels within the township that are keeping chickens and rabbits that are smaller than 2.5 acres. And as John had said, within the village you do have much smaller parcels that are allowing for backyard chickens and other Class 3 animals like rabbits and other fowl.
Remind me of how we handled the roosters.
We decided instead of creating violations that we were going to bring violations into compliance. So instead of creating violators, we were going to eliminate the prohibition of roosters, and then I could enforce that based on a noise ordinance. So within our current ordinance, we still have our setbacks, our requirements for proper placement and restriction for proper housing and for for the elimination of waste. The only thing that our last discussion, we felt that instead of recreating the wheel, we would just remove a spoke. So we'll just remove the size lot restriction and leave the rest of the ordinance alone. And then in a year's time, if I had an accumulation of noise ordinance violations due to roosters on small lots, then we would go ahead and address that at that time.
The one other thing I think we all agreed we should do, and the board can correct me if I'm wrong, is actually include the definition of what a class 3 animal is within the ordinance under definitions, basically just eliminating somebody from having to take 2 steps to figure out what they're looking at.
Right, and I agree with that too, though. I do send definitions when I do send a violation letter. I send the ordinance with which they are violating, as well as the definition if it's not written within the ordinance. So I do send that definition along with the ordinance. The same thing that I do with temporary signage, because the temporary signage in our previous ordinance wasn't spelled out, so I would do the definitions along with the sign ordinance, because temporary signage didn't show that it included banners, flags, and things of that nature.
How many rooster complaints have you had in the last, say, 12 months?
2.
Just 2?
Yeah, one for the roaming and one for noise.
And those were resolved?
Those were resolved, yes. One removed their rooster, and one made sure that they added enclosure.
All right. First of all, let's let the record show that at 6:39, Pat got here. Pat, we are about to open the public hearing for the rooster ordinance. So with that, is there anybody who wishes to speak?
Glenn?
Well, I just wanted to comment or ask about the class 3 animals are defined where. In other words, if you're having a problem, you're going to define it. But if you're just looking at this with the idea of having chickens, would you be able to find it quickly when you got to this?
If you're
because that's the reason for putting it
right. If you're looking on our website at our ordinances, you would put in animals, and then it gives you all of the different ordinances and places within our code of ordinances where that comes up. So if you were to put in chickens, poultry, class 3, or maintenance of animals or animals, you would be able to get to that definition.
I'm just saying with Tony is I like the idea of it being defined somewhere close by,
and
so it's easy to find. And
I
agree
with that as well, and not only class 3, but class 1 and class 2.
Yep, very good.
Okay. This time, if you'd like to speak, step up to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Billington, and I live at 3300 Quick Road. My husband and I, Neil, are new to the area, and we happen to live next door to one of these houses that houses chickens. And I like to know, hearing what I'm hearing right now, there's no minimum lot size, and I hear no minimum animal. Right now, our neighbor next door, we have just under an acre. They probably have just a little bit more because they have an easement. There's chickens everywhere. And they are the one that had the rooster that had to be removed. I do know that. It wasn't us that called and complained, someone else. But these people are, you give them a little and they're taking a lot. And there's no consideration for the other neighbors in the neighborhood. If they want to have all that livestock, I feel they should have a little more property that doesn't interfere with the surrounding neighbors' enjoyment of their own backyard. You got all these birds here. I love animals. I'm not saying that. But when is too many too many? And with no lot size and no number specifically, we're going to have 50 chickens there. And I'm not going to put up with that. You know, if you got one or two for a pet, and there's Charlie, and there's Betty, and there's Cluck, fine. But then you start getting too many, because every time they lay an egg, that's a potential for another chicken. They're like rabbits. They're going to multiply, and who's going to check this? Is our code enforcer, Mr. Jeremy, is he still the code enforcer?
That's
For the
village.
township,
That's me.
yeah.
Okay, so are you guys going to come out once a month or every 3 months and check or spontaneously check and count their chickens to see?
Not if we don't have a restriction in number.
I think we should have a restriction of number and a minimum lot size, because we live next to these people and it is getting carried away, and they're running amok with can't touch me, and their behavior shows it, not only in chickens but in other areas of backyard, and the rest of us neighbors are paying the price for their lack of consideration or respect. So I oppose no minimum lot, and I oppose no number.
Thank you. You said you're on Quick Road?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I live at 3300 Quick Road. I'd like to know about the burn ordinances. Well, I've had to call the fire department.
Sir, unfortunately, this is a public hearing just
Okay.
for the chickens.
All right.
What you're talking about, we will have a second public comment at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
At which point you can ask the question and
I will.
we'll get it addressed for you.
All right, thank you.
Sure, no problem. Anybody else for this topic? Hearing none, can I get a motion to close public hearing?
I'll move that we, close public hearing of Chapter 2 zoning, Article 4 supplementary regulation, Section 32-145, maintenance of animals, in parentheses, chicken.
All right. Can I get a support?
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by C, support by Stacy to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, so that closes public hearing. Now we will move on to the approval of minutes from our December meeting. The chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a support?
Support.
Yeah,
I think it
that's
was
all
at the
right.
same time.
All right. So we have a motion by Glenn, support by Stacy to approve the minutes as written. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, communications, I guess I will mention, got this flyer from Headwater Trails, about an owl walk and live owl presentation, January 26th, at, where is this being held here?
Methodist Church.
5 o'clock at the Methodist Church.
At 5 p.m. at the Methodist Church. If anybody would like to see this after the meeting, I'll be glad to show it to them. And if not, contact Sue Julian, who is the president of Headwater Trails, at 248-634-3513 for more information on that. Okay, moving on to old business, item number 1, blight ordinance, going back to dumpsters.
So in the package, there was a memo from Mike regarding some of the issues that were brought up, discussed previously on dumpsters. And he has outlined basically a number of standards for dumpster enclosures. And these pretty much parallel, again, what the village of Holly is doing. So, you know, and stop me if you've already discussed, did you guys discuss these last month, or is this the first time you're looking at these?
Most of this we discussed, yeah, the last meeting.
Most of what we're looking at lies within the Grange Hall Fish Lake overlay. This is something that I think we may want to table. I did not bring the pictures that I had promised last month, and I apologize for that. That was an oversight on my part. But I did attend a meeting earlier this week at the City of Rochester Hills regarding their solid waste disposal. And it's my feeling as the code enforcement officer that the dumpsters doesn't necessarily need to reside within the blight ordinance, and being that I was exposed newly to some other municipalities that do have waste disposal ordinances as a whole that address from many different aspects, including it does include the blight aspect of having, you know, your trash out to the road or whatnot, but we're not talking about personal dumpsters anymore. We've decided to not allow personal dumpsters. We were talking in reference as to commercial dumpsters only, but I think that might be something that we want to look at for its own ordinance, not within the blight ordinance. And on second thought, following our previous meeting, I did agree when I started to think about the same way as chickens, as that we would be creating violators. And Mike had made a good point that the dumpster placement and the housing could be looked at for future developments within the site plan approval process. So there's some more research that I would like to do to be able to bring forth to you from not only the City of Rochester Hills, but some more of our rural townships that have addressed this, and not such a lengthy ordinance, being that, as we had discussed last month, that we do have some commercial properties that are not very deep, and because of the setup of their property, they're not going to be able to set aside this large portion of their parcel for an enclosure to code. So not only are we creating a violation, but we're asking them to invest a large amount in just their dumpster. So I had a conversation with Chris Barnett of Orion Township and Leanna of Independence Township, and then the code enforcement for Rochester Hills, the city of, and they had given me some other places to look. I just attended that on Monday, so I wasn't able to get that to you today. But I feel that if we table this, we'll be able to address it in a different way come next month or the following. Being that it's not a pressing issue, I don't have any current violation or not violations, but I don't have any current complaints. It was something that we derived from looking at the personal dumpsters, and I think that maybe we could present it a different way for our code of ordinances, especially more from like a solid waste disposal aspect.
Questions?
I would think that.
What?
I like
she's,
she covered a lot of
she's the person.
I thought some things were really very strongly worded here,
Right.
that you had to put it behind your building, and it just isn't practical in some ways, even though you might want to.
Right.
I like the township's wording that said location orientation of the waste receptacle enclosure shall minimize the potential waste to be viewed from public street or adjacent residential, instead of saying you have to.
Right.
Also, the base design probably is a great idea for the heavy duty, but boy, that is costly for people to do. So that's.
I agree, and I feel like if we were to maybe look at it from a different aspect of trying to mask, which could be done with hedgerow, something of that nature. If we were to give that option, then again, for future developments, you'll be able to address that within that approval. You'll be able to ask those questions and see what their plans are for that. I feel that being that Holly is rural and that we do have such a small commercial area within our township, that we don't want to create violators, and we don't want to impede their production by putting on a hefty project that it could be very costly, and for some small businesses could be
just not doable.
So, within, and they're not exactly dumpsters, but they're receptacles. Been talking to people with the village and doing some research on these charity bins that are popping up and have popped up. Can we, if the board so chooses, can we roll something into this that deals with those, or would that have to be something separate?
I can do the research on that. I can call around, and my Maceo group has been a huge resource. I can do a questionnaire through them and see if we have surrounding communities that have legislation on that. I don't see why we couldn't throw that in, though I'm not very sure outside of the village how many of those there are. I think maybe one in my mind that I would know of.
Right. I'm thinking just for down the road for growth,
right.
Growth purposes.
That's my thought. How many do we have?
I think
that
maybe
we would need to
one,
address
and that's in
for
that northwest shopping.
Yeah,
there.
that's the one I've seen.
That's the only one that comes to mind.
Okay. So can I get a motion? Any further discussion? Can I get a motion to table this?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion by Glenn, support by Stacy to table discussion on dumpsters until next month's meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, moving on to old business number 2, amendment to Chapter 32 zoning, Article 4, the chicken ordinance. Before I get out of breath. You guys have anything to add before we... Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I think that it's up to you guys at this point as to what you would like to see. We've discussed it for, I think this is now our 3rd month on this.
At least.
Mm-hmm.
So, just in terms of the process, you'd be making a recommendation to the township board, who would then consider it for adoption, if you so choose.
Now, we'll go around the table real quick. Pat?
All right. Well, I understand, we talked about the fact that, like I said, making violators automatically by doing it, putting the limits and everything on. The only thing I might suggest that I thought it doesn't alleviate some of the people's not being happy with the ordinance, not having numbers on it, but we had mentioned it in the past, and that was having a review time, like either a year, 6 months, a year. That way it's not something where it's there and then someone says, well, and all they get told is it's the ordinance. So if we put something in there that we review it, we'd hear from our code enforcer, how much complaints have you gotten, and what, have you seen people really pushing the limits on this? And I just think that would be something appropriate to add to it myself. Just give us a chance to take a look back at it, because when you're thinking of the more rural parts of the township and that, that's where a lot of us were thinking with the restrictions seemed a little too restrictive. But when you do look at when it is closer together, and people, like anything, always want to push the limits on stuff, and I think it might be just wise for us to take a look back and see if that does become a problem.
Okay. Macy?
I agree with what Commissioner Feeney said, and I appreciate the residents for their comments. I know we've talked about this for several months, so something to consider, complaints of the neighbors. But for now, that's all I have to say.
Lloyd?
I think we need to consider the quantity of the chickens that they can have. There has to be some sort of limit. Is it 50? Is it 100? Is it 200? To open up a chicken farm, there should be some sort of cap on it. It's just for pet purposes. It would be, 10 or a dozen, but if it grows to 50 or 100, I wouldn't want to live next to that.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think that back to our discussion last month, that's going to go with lot size. Say, just as Mr. Mitchell as an example, to restrict him to a number would not make as much sense as it would to somebody that owns a 1 acre parcel on Quick Road. So we have a diverse township to where we have some condensed living areas, but for the most part we have the sprawl. So that you obviously you can craft an ordinance how you would prefer. In our previous conversations we had talked about many different things. So is it 1 acre? Is it half an acre? Is it going to be the 2.5 acres? So at some point you're always going to have someone that's not going to meet it and want to, or somebody that meets it and still goes way overboard. There's always going to be a variable there.
What do our neighbor townships do? Do we know what anybody else is doing?
Well, again, the Village of Holly has, they're allowed 6 to their lot, but then they don't allow roosters, which from a code enforcement aspect to me is more of a noise complaint than it is for a Class 3 animal. And again, to not allow roosters, I think that would be for your smaller parcels, not for your larger parcels. It doesn't really make too much sense for, you know, a 50-acre parcel to not be allowed to have roosters, where it might make more sense for a half acre or an acre. But then again, we had another conversation leaning to that we are a rural township, and some people do accept that and are happy with their neighboring chickens. Some are not.
You know, not to delay this, but we have done surveys of other communities in a summary chart that shows what each community, what each community does with respect to which ones allow roosters, which ones have minimum lot sizes, what districts are they allowed in, that sort of thing. So I'd be happy to provide that.
But even if you live on a 50-acre parcel, you probably live on one corner of that. When there's a neighbor right across that line, which is maybe 20 feet away, and now you've got your roosters up here in this corner.
Where you still have to meet your setbacks.
I understand.
And even with your right to farm, again, you still have to meet your setbacks from neighboring parcel lines and neighboring dwellings. And even dwellings within your own parcel.
Glenn?
We skip down here.
You know I go end to end.
All right. The numbers issue gets into how many is ever going to be permissible. 6 and 10, it doesn't make that much difference to the chickens. 10 chickens may be just as good as 50 if they're properly taken care of. So when we start to try and define numbers, I think and is it little chickens or is it adult chickens or is there a difference between the two? So you have all kinds of issues. I don't see how we're ever going to get into a number that pleases very many people, because it's either going to be too many or too few, no matter how you come up with numbers. So I say, and realize this is Class 3 animals, not just chickens. There's rabbits, there's other kinds of poultry, there's other things we're doing with this. So if you're saying you can only have 6 rabbits in a place, you might not even know if your neighbor even has a rabbit, and they could have a whole garage full of them and not affect you. I've never had rabbits, but I think they're pretty quiet and unassuming. So once you get to numbers, it makes it very complicated. I don't think we'd ever please anybody completely with a number here. Lot sizes, I can understand smaller people with lots, but I think that, again, treating as a nuisance, that's the way to go. If it's a problem, then you treat it as a nuisance. But why do you make everybody be a problem just because they have one more chicken than they're allowed? I don't understand that. Also, when you talk about roosters, when is it a rooster? Is it considered a rooster when it's a month old and doesn't crow? Or, it's a problem because it does make noise. And I really will readily admit roosters make a lot of noise and can be a problem. But I think you got to deal with it as a nuisance, because you buy chickens, and sometimes, I believe somebody even mentioned that, they bought chickens that they thought were all hens, which they sell them as sex poultry, but you may end up with roosters without you really being intending to have a rooster. So when did you become a violator? When it first crowed, or when you first got the chick, I guess? So I think this solves a lot of issues, keeps it open, and we can always revisit it if it does become problems. But I think once you start trying to put a number on some of these things, you end up with a lot of problems. And we are a rural community. I think a lot of people move here because of the fact we don't have some of those restrictions, and they're able to do some things. Also, if you live in some of these rural areas, you're going to have turkeys, wild turkeys, come to your lots. And you have to realize they're wild animals, so we can't really restrict those. And it's kind of the same. To me, it's kind of the same thing. You're going to have animals on your property sometimes. Maybe you don't want. Hopefully, as neighbors, you're a good neighbor and do keep track of your animals, but that's not always going to happen. I do want to remind, I think in some material that Mike Deem gave us months ago, or online, was that I think it was over 40% of the people at some point were expecting to either have chickens or were going to get chickens. So this is an area that we will be dealing with constantly unless we have something that's reasonable. So that's my take on this.
Stacy?
I agree with Glenn. Everything that he just said is what my stance is as well. I would just say that we want to caution ourselves in the fact that we don't want to build an ordinance for one person either. So I think that keeping it open is the right way to go. We are in a rural community, or a more rural community, and there are still other means to pursue complaints at that point.
You're up, Ray.
Hey, I'm new to the party. And I don't like ordinances that restrict what I do on my property. However, I live next to a neighbor like they did, and I can relate to that. It's a problem. Mine went away, but theirs might not. So, yeah, I emphasize with you. So, and Glenn's an expert on chickens, and I would agree. Whether you have 10 or 200, I mean, I understand that's a problem too. So right now, the ordinance is what? How large do you have to have right now?
2.5 acres.
And you want to make it nothing.
That there's no lot restriction.
No lot restriction at all.
So currently we have a lot of violators because
I understand.
Right, you can have
But so if you do that, how will she enforce a nuisance to that? I mean, if you made no
I would do
restriction-
it either through disturbing the peace, or we have a noise ordinance that specifically states animal noises.
So the noises I can see, but chickens don't necessarily make a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see where they would be, you know, if they bordered your backyard, it'd be a problem. But I don't like restrictions, so I know I'm talking on both sides of the fence here. I read about chickens all the time. You know, there's always issue with chickens everywhere. So I'd like to see what he had for all the other communities, what they did for, you know, to solve the problem. I would think that'd be.
Well, several of them spent a lot of lengthy litigation because of chickens.
Right, yeah,
so.
yeah, I don't want to call it grief, but I mean,
It
if
is
you
a
had
hot topic.
a chart that showed what everybody else did, that'd just be interesting to see how.
Because
it
our
worked.
current ordinance will, the remainder of the ordinance will still stand. So you'll still have to meet all of your setbacks. You'll still have to meet your enclosure. You'll still have to make sure that they're properly maintained, that you maintain the waste and remove the waste properly, and that they have proper shelter. So the only thing that we're removing would be the lot size restriction. And I guess maybe
Number 2 here actually says that your other restraining, or they should be adequate fencing or other restraining device. But it's like cats. How much can you cage them to some extent? But there already is in the ordinance that we're going to keep.
Actually, I'd like to ask a question of you. You said that you lived next door to a neighbor that
It
you
wasn't chickens; it was a totally different type of animal.
But what was your experience with it? Was it the
They-
smell? Were they loud? Was it messy? Were there feathers everywhere?
It was not
there
chickens.
feed?
It was very messy and it smelled very bad.
Okay.
And
Pigs.
eventually,
It's on the pigs.
and you know, so no, I mean, it went away. The people they moved, but you know, I mean, there wasn't something to fix the problem. I lived with it. It wasn't, but still, I can appreciate exactly what they're saying. But the fact that I don't like people telling me what to do with my property, so I just like to see what other communities really did to solve the problem, if there really was a solution.
In my guess is that wasn't the only problem you had with that neighbor, perhaps too, and probably the same with the chickens. That's probably not the
water
only
under the
issue
bridge.
you have.
It's just
yeah. So it's just one of the.
But I'm
issues,
assuming they have a very similar problem. It's probably just not chickens. It's you know.
You know what I mean?
All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah, so
there's.
I'm not being much help here. I can tell.
No,
But,
you're.
you know, it's-
No,
that's
that's perfect.
easy.
It's just I don't have a lot of exposure to. I have it's all hearsay for me because I don't have a lot of exposures to chickens in general, but I have a lot of positive information on the side of not having limits, but I don't know a lot of the other side. So I guess I'm trying to educate myself on what the negatives could be. So,
you know, but you made the comment about making it for one or a few because they violate. And I
Right.
guess the way I was looking at it when we were taking the restrictions away was putting more, sorry, Amy, more emphasis on the code enforcers. So when such as these people are having a problem, because that's going to have a little bit more bite than, you know, someone going out and saying, well, how many chickens do you have? How big is your lot and that? And that's the way I was looking at it, is that, you know, we're putting the emphasis on nuisance problems of it where it belongs and taking it out of the ordinance. And like you said, not punishing people from day one. Sure. You
Right.
know, so that's, and I know for people that are, you know, next door to somebody, because it's like you might be in a position where you find out that, well, unfortunately they meet some of the requirements and blah blah blah, and that, you know, that's not a great consolation. But on the other hand, if there is the nuisance, the code enforcer is going to have more of a bite to it. There isn't the you know, ambiguous, you know, it can go to court, because a nuisance is a nuisance, and that's going to be a real hard one for them to fight. Whereas if we put a restriction that doesn't comply with other local areas and that, they could sit there and take us to court and say, well, why is my property restricted when someone, you know, half a mile down the road isn't? And that's kind of, you know, when you look at it, it's hard to divide the township up and say, well, you can't and you can. And that's kind of the, you know, the way I was looking at it from my point of view was, you know, it's like, I understand I don't want 50 chickens on a very small lot. But, you know, then to say our ordinance said before you couldn't have any there and Glenn couldn't have any. And that didn't make any sense either. Unfortunately, we kind of live in a society where, you know, a lot of people will say, well, why can't I do what they're doing? Sometimes, you know, trying to split the hairs and saying because of where you live. So, you know, the compromise is, okay, if you can be responsible, we'll let you do it. And that's kind of where I think we're at, you know.
The responsible part, because you could have 2 chickens that create more problems than 50 chickens. It's how they're housed, how they're taken care of, is whether they become a nuisance for somebody.
And what I would suggest to anybody that's having a problem, and once again, Amy, kind of jumping on you,
my job.
would be to get with the code enforcement.
First, talk with a neighbor about the problem.
Right. Well, that's always the first. But,
yeah,
you know,
and it should be the first. It's not always the first.
But lacking that any satisfaction from that, I would say get with the code enforcement so you know what, you know, they can and cannot do, because there's a lot of times you might be surprised there's something that they've been doing that is totally in violation. It might be a lot easier to deal with to get them to change their behavior than another area. But I think Amy would be definitely up to giving an explanation on the do's and don'ts of what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, and I'm happy to make sure that they meet their setbacks, and any disturbing the peace and noise ordinance violations are absolutely
And the reason why I was what the time was is just kind of setting the time aside to take a look at it, is because if we did have numerous people violating it, I mean, you know, if we did have it and it was quite obvious they were taking great advantage of it, I don't think it's, you know, it should be something where, well, you know, we'll study it. It should be, okay, here's the time we're going to look at it, give it enough time on there to say, you know, for people to get used to the new ordinance, and then say, you know, and see if there's any violations on it, see if it's a problem, see if the nuisance kind of idea of it is keeping everything under control.
All right. My thoughts on this are all over the place. You guys, when we first started talking about this, I was 100% against the idea of having roosters on lot sizes under 2.5 acres, and very much in favor of putting some number limits on the smaller parcels, specifically on the under 2.5. Thinking that, well, before you couldn't have any at all, so now if we let you have 20, you're much further ahead of the game than you were, and in the reality that if somebody has 22, the only reason anybody's going to know that is if there's a reason, a code issue, and at that point, Amy's going to come out and, as the old saying goes, count your chickens.
Try and do that easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
yeah, after they've hatched.
Easier before.
Now, at the last meeting, I did bring up the idea of let's have this the mandatory review, and I'm still in favor of that. My concern is, I don't know if we can retroactively make people get rid of animals they already had when they were legal to have. And I guess that's a question for both of you.
Well, it's not legal.
So if we give everybody a free-for-all, and I would like to properly define what is considered proper care, because to me, proper care of chickens is free ranging and not free roaming all over the yard and everything, but making sure they've got a run and doing all these other things. Somebody else might say proper care is giving them food and water, and if they don't have room to move, that's...
Well, the state of Michigan provides that within their GAMPS and the Right to Farm Act. That's readily available information, and I believe that I had forwarded a lot of that to you in the fall when we first started addressing this. So, and like Glenn had stated, you can have people that have 2 and don't take care of them properly.
Sure.
You can have somebody that has 50 and takes care of them, and you would never know. We discussed when we were discussing roosters about not creating violators, about bringing people into compliance instead of creating violators. I don't specifically know as to whether I can retroactively violate someone as the ordinance changes. Of course, then we're going to ebb and flow there. So we know that we have people in violation of the current ordinance as it stands. We know that we have chickens on smaller lots, very obviously. As far as the enforcement of that on a smaller lot, if it was a complaint about a number or a nuisance, I think as a code enforcement standpoint, I would take a look at the parcel and then look at the setbacks to see if they were meeting their setbacks and address it from that aspect, as well as the disturbing the peace and the noise ordinance.
I think, Tony, when you think about it, anytime you amend any kind of ordinance, you're going to run into the same issue. Can I go back and now with the new ordinance? That's always going to be that kind of that.
Just
topic.
right. We have the same issue with the sign ordinance.
Right.
You
Just
know,
in this
so-
case, we're dealing with living creatures, and if somebody ends up with 40 chickens and we decide to cut it down to 30, we have a catch-22 there. Does this person have to get rid of 10 chickens, or are we going to let them keep them until they die off? I mean, we're thinking down the road. So, but to wrap up my comments, I have a lot of reservations, but I'm willing to go with the flow here, so to speak, and trust the consensus, the general consensus
Mr.
of...
Chair, I think our planner had something.
Well, I was just gonna, I think you're absolutely right. If you approve someone after this ordinance is put into place and they want to have 20 chickens and they invest in the facilities to keep 20 chickens, and then a year down the road you say, okay, you can only have 10 chickens, they've become a legal non-conforming use and could continue to have 20 chickens forever. If that's how zoning works. That's how the zoning ordinance works. Now, if these regulations were in your general code of ordinances, then the nonconformities wouldn't apply.
So until the property changes
No.
hands, it would be that way.
Yeah.
So in other words-
Until they stopped keeping chickens. Until they stopped keeping chickens. If they eliminated, they got rid of all their chickens and stopped, then they couldn't restart it. So as long as they continuously maintain their 20 chickens, they would be legal non-conforming.
So even if property hands change, like the property owners change, so say I purchase a property where they had 20 chickens, even though ownership has changed, I'm going to be grandfathered in on an ordinance that went into effect
Right,
when
it would run with the land, absolutely. Yeah.
I did not know that.
What's the board's pleasure?
Why don't we table it until you can give us the information from the other?
Okay.
We're going to keep
Surrounding.
on going for this forever, and it's
But-
never going to be resolved any better.
But we
than-
also have a new person here
We
who
have a new
hasn't
person
had-
here.
who
So,
hasn't, doesn't
so
have
is that
closure.
is that a
I would
motion?
make a motion to put this forward to the township as presented. I think we can always go back and revisit it. It's not going to be any worse than this is. When we, you know, I don't see a horrendous problem coming up. I think Amy's not seeing a horrendous problem coming up either. Let's get this in so we get rid of the people that are violating unintentionally right now, because I think we have a fair number of people in our township that are in violation of this ordinance right now that don't
Right.
even realize it.
Yeah, animal hoarding has not been an issue in the 3 years that I've been doing this. I've
And if
not
there is,
had
there's
an
things that take care of that.
right.
too.
I've not had an animal hoarding complaint.
All right, so we have a motion by Glenn to send the ordinance as presented to the township board. Is there a second?
In order for discussion, I'll second that.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Glenn, support by AC. At this time, I'll open it up for discussion. AC?
Yeah, I agree, and I also like to remind the public that we are recommending it goes to the trustees. So you still have another avenue of making your concerns known before it happens by going to the trustees before they vote on it.
Can we, if this motion passes, can we get that information you're talking about in the hands of the trustees so that they have it when they go for the final approval?
Absolutely.
Could I ask one other question
Yeah.
too? Is what if it's possible? Is there any way to find out any kind of statistics on what kind of lawsuits have been brought up in the surrounding communities concerning chickens? You know, situations such as the people with chickens suing municipalities for different reasons, because that might be helpful. Because we might have something sitting in our ordinance that might be a red flag. I was just thinking that if we saw something that said, hey, most of your issues with your residents comes from this and this, because that would be kind of nice to be able to see.
Well, do you want that here or do you want that at your board?
Well, I'm sorry to bring it up at such a late hour, but it just kind of occurred to me that that is something. If we're putting something in there that might provoke more legal issues, from that point of view.
It was recommended that if we put, I think Mike would have been the one that said it, if we put anything very restrictive, we want it to go through legal department because of those legal issues. But I don't see this could be an issue, really.
No.
Mike stated that since we were moving, that we should be, that it needs to be reviewed
So you
by
feel
legal.
that'd be-
But if we were going to be changing numbers or anything along those
So
lines, we would.
so it was kind of basically you figure what's here has been vetted enough. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Could we ask John? Aren't we going to find there's just all over the place, either no regulations or all kinds of numbers, or you're not going to find a consensus, are you, by looking at this, in your experience? Correct?
You're gonna find, yeah.
You're not going to find
range.
everybody
But-
has 10 chickens or.
But there's going to be a range of different approaches. Yeah. But I think you're going to find that. Well, why don't I give you the information, then you can discuss it. Maybe the board will kick it back. But I think you're going to find that there are some limits, especially on smaller lots. I think that's generally the practice.
And if we're going to send that on to the trustee, that seems to me that we haven't really finished our job.
Yeah, I
of
was going to say, I think.
reviewing whatever that information is and making an appropriate recommendation.
I still think this is an appropriate recommendation. I don't think we can talk about this every meeting. We're still not going to come up with 10 chickens or 15 chickens or 30 chickens that we will all agree upon. I think that's still going to be the issue no matter what we go through. And I think still it's the nuisance aspect you're dealing with. Is it a problem? Is it really something that's affecting other people
Well,
negatively?
it seems like it is for these people back here in the back.
You're always going to find that. You're going to find that with somebody with a neighbor's dog. You're going to find it with something else that's happening. When they drive their cars, leave their driveways too early. There's always something that's going to bother a neighbor. We can't legislate all those things away or
But
ordinance
a
all those
number
things
limit
away.
is not hard to set. We're going to get some from John. He said there will be some out there that
Yeah, some will be 6, some will be 10, some will be 15. How are we going to pick which one is
we pick
the
one.
right number?
Ray, do you got anything?
I'm good. I tell you, I'm new. But, and not to make it drag out, if I had more information, then maybe by the next time, I'm sorry.
I, on something like this, especially with what John just pointed out, as far as even if we adjust the ordinance down the road, we could end up with people in non-compliance for perpetuity. I would like to see that information myself. So,
I also want to point, we had one couple here complaining about it. It has been published. It was in the Tri-County.
Oh, I agree.
If this was a big issue, we would have this
well,
filled.
the point that I would bring up though is that we are now legally opening this up to a lot of people who legally could not have them before, and in the smaller parcels where, at least in my mind, there is a greater potential for problems than there would be for the people who have 20, 40, 50 acres. I think now we're saying to everybody with half an acre, you can have chickens now. And this guy may want some, and this guy may want some. The two people in between may not. So as I said, what John just pointed out is if we grant this guy and this guy unlimited chickens,
They don't live forever. So
well, but he said they can continue to have 20 chickens, so they can just keep buying. That was my question. If they die off, they can still be replaced up to the limit of whatever number they had before. And who knows? What if they claim they had 50 at the time?
Mr. Chair, there's a motion. If we don't want this, we can vote the motion down. And
Yeah. All right. Let me get a roll call on the motion. The motion is to send the ordinance as written to the township trustees.
I don't think you got a second, did you? I think you opened
Yes,
up.
I
Yeah,
second.
AC seconded it for the purpose of
that's why we
discussion.
can discuss it.
So,
Stacy Steckley,
No.
AC Alray,
Yes.
Pat Feeney,
No.
Glenn Mitchell,
Yes.
Lloyd Kernan,
No.
Ray Curtin,
No.
Tony Engelberg.
no. So the motion fails. So I will make a motion that we postpone this until the next meeting and ask John to present the information that he's got.
And appreciate that bit because what he brought up about the continuing non-conforming, I'll be honest with you, that hadn't been in the thought on that one. That would concern me.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have my motion to table and have John bring this up, the information to us at the next meeting. We have a second by AC. Do we have any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Glenn Mitchell,
What are we voting on again?
We're voting
More info.
to table this for tonight, and have John bring us that information that he was discussing to the next meeting.
I would say no, just to be contrary, since you didn't go with
You're-
that. I think it should be over with, but
Okay.
okay.
Lloyd Kernan,
Yes.
Ray Curtin,
Yes.
Tony Engelberg,
Yes.
Pat Feeney,
Yes.
AC Alray,
Yes.
Stacy Steckley.
Yes.
All right. The good news is, it's not like people are correct me if I'm wrong, are buying chickens
But
right
they
now.
will next
March.
month.
By next month they will. By March
Yeah,
they will.
so that's, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's,
So by the time the township board, if we do manage to get this taken care of, actually don't forget our meeting's in 2 weeks. So we've got a pretty quick turnaround time here. So by the time the township board would review this at the February meeting would be in time for people who would want to get baby chicks would still be able to without any problems. So, okay, moving on to new business item number 1, election of officers. Currently, right now, we have myself as chair, we have Stacy as vice chair, and we have Glenn as the noble secretary. So the chair will start this off. The chair will entertain motion or nominations for the position of chairman.
I would like to nominate Tony Engelberg for the chairman position.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Stacy and a second by Glenn to put me back on the hot seat for another year. I would accept that nomination. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Tony Engelberg.
Guess I'm going to say yes.
We need to close nominations.
Ray Curtin.
Yes.
Lloyd Kernan.
Yes.
Glenn Mitchell.
Yes.
Stacy Steckley.
Yes.
AC Allray.
Questions? Do we have closed nominations before
yeah,
we?
that's right.
Yeah, we do. That.
Move that
No.
we make a motion.
Clerk says it's okay.
No, we're good? Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Pat Feeney.
Yes.
All right. I'd like to thank the board for your vote. Have appreciated the last year and look forward to another year. Okay, moving on to vice chair. Currently held by Stacy. Do we have any motions or nominations?
I'd make a motion for Stacy to continue on.
I'll second.
Thank you.
So we do this properly. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we have a motion by Lloyd and a second by AC to return Stacy to vice chair. Any further discussion?
And will we close the nominations and vote unanimously for Stacy?
Support.
Well, thank you.
I think by the book we still need to do a roll call. Go ahead.
Try to save time.
AC Allray.
Yes.
Pat Feeney.
Yes.
Ray Curtin.
Yes.
Lloyd Kernan.
Yes.
Glenn Mitchell.
Yes.
Tony Engelberg.
Yes.
Stacy Steckley.
Yes.
And the dog outside says yes too.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the office of secretary.
With following tradition, I nominate Ray Curtin, the secretary, if he accepts.
We didn't give Glenn a choice last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is a good breaking in process.
Was
I
there
will
a
second.
Okay. Formally, I have to ask you: will you accept the nomination?
Well, I just want to be sure there's nothing I have to do.
We can't,
No
we
guarantees
can't guarantee
of that, sir.
Well,
Somebody else does that for you.
When I
You
start
just have to-
shuffling my papers and say where the heck is this, you start pointing. That's I mean that's.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at shuffling.
He never even made me do
I
that.
didn't. Well, yeah. I mean.
I was probably going to point to the
Usually,
wrong
because I was
spot.
sitting there like, go here.
Then certainly.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we have a motion. Who made the motion?
I did.
A motion by AC and a second by Stacy to nominate our new member, Mr. Ray Curtin, as secretary of the board. Roll call, please.
Tony Engelberg.
Yes.
Pat Feeney.
Welcome aboard. Yes.
AC Allray.
But of course,
Ray Curtin.
Yes.
Lloyd Kernan.
Yes.
Stacy Steckley.
Yes.
Glenn Mitchell.
Yes.
Welcome to the
Well,
party.
Welcome.
thank you.
All right. All right. Very good.
I think they use it as a form of initiation. I can
Yeah. The dunk tank is out back. All right. Moving on. Recognition for Ted Gursky. This is something I think we all talked about. I would just like to say, to kick off the discussion, that several years ago I started off on the village planning commission, I was trying to get involved, and I had no idea what this was. And I was very fortunate with the village to have a gentleman by the name of Doug Henderson. And then when I came to the township, Ted Gursky, who both took the time to take me under their wings and show me, who knew nothing about nothing, how to be a board member, what to do, and so every day that I sit in this chair, I do it in honor of both Ted and Doug, and so I publicly would like to thank both of them for being amazing role models for me. So, with that said, I'd like to go around ideas, suggestions. What would you guys like to do? I mean, Ted had been with this board for years, decade, at least a decade. And I mean, I know this was something he loved to do. We all had hoped he'd make it back, but I think at this point, at least what we can do is find a way to thank him.
Well, I thought maybe tree planting somewhere. If we were to get a tree, because we know how passionate Ted was about trees, and one of my first discussions with Ted was about trees. So I would be.
Does our ordinance allow us to cut it down later?
No.
Does not.
You would get Ted in here to discuss that thoroughly, But I was just thinking a tree. The only thing I wasn't quite sure is where we would locate it at, but I was maybe somewhere in some park or
Come up to the mic, George.
I thought maybe we could find out what might have been one of his favorite trees too. That might be
I was just going to offer as a location for that tree. We are going to be planting trees at the farmstead in the spring, and I think that first tree could be planted for Ted.
But we need a little.
No,
plaque
we can put a
or
plaque up there
sign
with
or
that.
We
something.
have a tree on there right now that has a plaque, so that was planted years and years ago.
Yeah, there's a tree on the farmstead for somebody else, and I think we could do the same thing.
I guess that solves the location.
AC?
Yeah, I'd like to see two items. One, I guess a resolution from the township, or ask the township to do a resolution. And then secondly, what would it be called? A certificate of recognition from this board. So that'd be two different pieces of paper. And I've got some samples if we need some samples from other places.
And a nice frame for the certificate.
Yeah, nice frames.
Like put it.
Yeah,
package it
definitely glass.
nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inside and framed. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
framed, definitely.
Lloyd?
I'd just like to say I worked with Ted probably 8 to 10 years on this commission, and he ran a very good meeting. He was prepared. He knew what we needed, and we got a lot of things accomplished, and we do today too. But he was meant to be in that role. I think he enjoyed it and did it for a long time, as long as he could. He even came when he wasn't feeling so well. He still made it here. So I'd just like to say thanks to Ted. Whatever we can do for him would be great.
Glenn?
I never knew Ted.
You didn't know
By
Ted?
the time I
Okay.
came, he wasn't here, but I did come to a couple meetings. He seemed very nice, very fair person. Tree sounds like a wonderful thing. That's always a good tribute to somebody.
I unfortunately did not know Ted very well either. He became ill probably about 4 or 5 months after I had started on the planning commission. He was very welcoming to me as well, and provided guidance and leadership to me in a time when I did not know what I was doing. So I like the idea of the tree. I think that's great. I also like the idea of the certificates. Do we have a status on how he's doing now? Have we been in communication?
I've tried. Yeah, that's the last I've heard. And every time I call, he's unavailable. So he's, yeah.
do we think it's something that he would be able to attend, or is it something that we would?
Send invitation to the family.
Okay.
And they can do with that as they will.
Okay.
And we,
Send a representative
I think-
at the time you plant the tree.
and we can always do a
Or
video.
do you receive
Video.
the recognition.
I thought
I
might.
think that's the appropriate way to handle it.
Yeah.
Okay, and
We
then
can always
also
do a
if we
video.
can make an effort to maybe go see them, if I know that visitors might be something you would express that visitors might be something that'd be nice as well. So maybe we can make an
Maybe we can
effort
arrange that as a
board.
group.
Yeah. So.
Ray, did you know?
I didn't know Ted at all. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay.
Everything you discussed here sounds like a great tribute. So.
Does the township send a thank you letter or anything to?
I'll reach out to the family and see what the options are. We'll follow through on those 2 things.
Okay. So I don't think we need to necessarily make a motion. I think the consensus here is we'll do a tree and a plaque. As far as I understand, the township can't necessarily put any financials into this, so we as a board may have to cough up a few bucks out of our pocket to do it. But I'm certainly willing to do that.
Just need to know.
Yeah.
Who would be the person organizing, putting all this together?
I
Is it
think
going to
that
be the township?
Okay. All right, I was about to throw that off on the vice chair.
She likes to delegate.
I was going to say
she does. I'm very good at delegating. Just ask my work. But yeah, no.
She looked right over and said, "You're going to do it."
Yeah.
Okay.
I will be in contact.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Real good, guys. Great, great ideas. Okay, moving on to reports. Pat.
Okay, well, it's a real quick turnaround because of our meeting tonight, but tomorrow night the Township Board will be considering our wind ordinance. So anybody that wants to come and support the wind ordinance, and I know all the jokes that can come from the wind ordinance and politicians, so I will refrain from that. Other thing I was trying to remember. Oh, I did want to bring up the fact that I see the Shiawassee River now has the state of Michigan designation, and that's good to see. I'm glad to hear that. And I was going to ask George, have you heard any more about, of course, government shutdown, I understand, but how close, do you know anything about how close we are to getting the national designation for the Shiawassee? No.
I haven't heard anything.
Okay. That kind of looking forward to seeing that on there. I was also wondering by chance if the anywhere in the near future that we might look at the possibility of when we're speaking of the trees and that, if Planning Commission might consider the idea of doing a survey of what's considered, or seeing if we could put together a program where we could have a survey the tree stock in the township. I don't know if that would fall under us or who that would fall under, but I've seen a couple communities have done that because we have had discussion over time which is an invasive one, what are normal ones and that, and it occurred to me that do we even really know or have an idea when we're we went about what trees should be removed in that, or when we did we're talking about the Woodlands Act and that, do we even have an idea what is considered native to this area? A lot of stuff there, we went back and forth on the Woodlands ordinance on there, and I thought, well, it might be a good idea if maybe we had an idea going forward of what our tree and our natural stock is. Just an idea to toss out there, that if we had some, overall.
Real quick, John, you look like you had a thought.
I'm just making some notes.
Okay.
There are a lot of communities that have done woodland inventories and things like that. We know arborists that could help with that, so I can give you some examples if that would help.
I wonder if there's a state, if there's anything that's been done on the state level.
MSU, I'm sure, has a lot of information.
I would think so.
Okay.
Just a thought.
And before I end it, I'd like to welcome Ray and
Yes.
John both. Looking forward to working with both of you, and it's good to see some of your faces on the board and with our new planner here.
Thank you. Thanks. That's it.
He's the boss man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the head.
He's the big one. Okay, well, I feel honored.
But we knew him way back when.
Yeah. Back when he had a beard.
Oh.
AC?
Yeah, just an FYI to our commissioners. I think over the years, and I keep forgetting to bring this up, but the last couple trainings I've been to, it's been stressed over and over, and that's why if it seemed like I was going out of my way to mention the specific, the title and the numbers and saying the words I make a motion, is because at every training, particularly the trainings I've been through this year, they really highly recommend that we don't say so moved. We say I make a motion to, and then list the specifics, the title, and the numbers associated, because they say you really should not say
Correct.
so moved.
Right.
That's so if I meant to bring you all something, and I can get you some literature to talk about specific language, but I'm sorry I didn't bring this up sooner, but I just want to make you aware. Also, I'm sure there's others that may want to give more details on this, but this Saturday is the Holly Chamber of Commerce's annual dinner, and there's others who probably have the specifics on that. I just want to bring that up. And I also want to make the public aware that there is a VFW auxiliary to post 5587, and we do things to promote our veterans, particularly those in the area. And to be an auxiliary member, you just have to have a parent, a spouse, what have you, who served in a foreign war. And we are looking for new members, and it's not from the old of it being all women. We do have 2 men, and I'm looking for some company. Not saying women are invited to join too, but we are going to be pushing out, getting the word out about the VFW auxiliary, particularly in Holly. And I just want to let the Planning Commission be the first ones to know that we're doing some things for the community, and we'll be doing a lot more. So you're all welcome. If you have members in your family who were veterans of foreign war, talk to me, and we look forward to your membership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lloyd?
I just want to say welcome to Ray also.
Thank you.
Good that you're secretary. We can get things taken care of now.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's it.
Is that it? Glenn?
Welcome to the new year. I don't think anything. Welcome, Ray. It's the least you'll ever hear me say.
Stacy?
I'd like to welcome Ray, of course. And then also something else in the community is now there at Carl Richter Community Center. They're doing a seniors day, and it's once a week, Thursday from 1 to 4. So come and join that. There's more information available on Facebook. And Happy New Year.
Right.
I'm unprepared, but thank you for having me. Hopefully I serve well.
You're here.
Oh, you are here. I would once again like to thank the board for the last year, and for putting me back in the center chair for another year. I have said previously, and will say again, I love the fact that we do not rubber stamp things without hammering out as many details as we can. It may not move as quickly as myself or sometimes others would like, but at the end of the day, nobody from the public can look at what we do and say that we're not doing our due diligence. And not giving people a chance to have their concerns heard and taking everything we can into account before we send what we do onto the township board. So I appreciate the discourse. I appreciate the back and forth that we have, and I think as a group we work well together. And Ray, I think you're going to be an excellent addition to that. So welcome. I did want to touch briefly. Myself and Pat was at the meeting too. We attended the Holly Township Parks meeting last week, and as the public would know, that's a board that I have been pretty critical of in the past. But along with that, it needs to be said they are starting to make some pretty incredible strides forward as far as transparency and coming into the new day with technology, trying to get their meetings streamed. So I'd like to commend them. I think there's some good things that are going to be coming up through the township parks. And I look forward to attending future meetings and seeing how they progress. And I think with that, that's about it. What was that?
Public comment.
Oh, that's what I meant. That's about it for me.
Oh.
Sheesh, you guys do. You guys have anything to add? Amy, John, are you going to be with us going forward, if I can ask?
You know, I'm going to absolutely be here for a few months until I can bring someone else and get them up to speed and things like that. But it is truly a pleasure to be back here. Obviously, I have fond memories of working with Ted, and I hope I do get to see him again. He was, on the committee that selected us to be, the planning consultant here. And over that time, we worked in a lot of communities, and Ted exhibited all of the attributes that you want to see in a leader on the planning commission. He was passionate, but soft-spoken, very level-headed in the face of a number of challenging, issues that we faced over the years. He steered us through the master plan process, along with others who spent a lot of time and effort on that. And like I said, I hope I get to see him again. And I do have fun thoughts of that. And we look forward to keeping the ball rolling with respect to a lot of planning projects that are, in the master plan. So I hope everyone's had a chance. I know in the last meeting there's a reference to the annual report that the planning commission gives to the township board. I know there's a draft floating around. I know that the planning commission wanted to add to that list. And I would encourage everyone to go back to the master plan, pull it out. It's got a lot of great projects in there that I think would help move the township forward with some of these initiatives that have been talked about. So.
Do you know when are we due to review that again?
We did last time.
Did we was it last year?
Last month. We did. I believe it was last year's review that was presented.
Isn't it this month, right?
Well, he presented to us last month of what he
The
had
year in review of
compiled,
what he
and then
dealt with.
we were, and then
We
we,
would come
gave
back.
suggestions, and then they were going to come back.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So you did give Mike suggestions.
We did cover it last month, yes. I
Okay.
believe we're in the draft, or he was going to be in the drafting
Right.
stage.
Okay.
That is off memory, though.
No, that's what I remember as well. Okay. Okay, that takes us on to the final public comment. This is for any topic of your choosing. If anybody has any public comment, feel free to step up to the microphone.
Sure.
Yeah. Please state your name and address for the record.
Neil Billington, 330 Quick Road, Holly Township, burn ordinance, environmental. When people's got 10-foot, 12-foot rings and burning leaves, is there ordinances on that? I've had the fire department out there and everybody so far, and the state police. What's my next step? Go to court with it, or what do we do next? To stop it. We complain about all the environmental and everything else, everybody else, and where are we at? We got 12-foot rings with burning leaves, smoked the whole neighborhoods. I've had to call the fire department 3 times and the state police, and I'm gonna start again when I walk out of here again.
What's your address again, please?
3300 Quick Road,
Okay.
Holly Township. my comment, everybody has opinions. I live by a bunch of farmers, but not knocking farmers, but they're morons. We've had problems with them since we started, with their language, cussing, and everything. I'm not going to tolerate it, and I'm not moving. I'm staying. So, you know, I don't know how long they've been here. I care less. But I'm going to get to the bottom of all this. It's going to be a nice summer. Hot. So what do we do with burn ordinances?
Our burn ordinances are enforced by the North Oakland Fire Authority.
So you
you're
can-
doing exactly what you have.
So they can burn leaves? Can we burn leaves in Holly Township? Yes or no?
Yeah, with the
They can.
yeah, we can.
Yeah.
All right, how do I go about getting a motion? Or do I go around and start getting petitions to stop it?
I think what Amy's telling you is that
Yeah.
you approach the right one with the fire, but instead, before the fire starts,
Yep.
maybe you need to approach the fire authority,
All
find
right.
out exactly what rules, if they're violating the rules, like there's wind rules, I do know that you have to, you know, on windy days, which I think is probably a major problem with you, is the burning the leaves and it's blowing.
Sure, and they
your
shouldn't be burning
direction.
leaves anyways, environmental, right? I'll call Lansing.
That you would have
Yeah.
to find out with the fire.
I'll call Lansing,
And-
OSHA.
well,
Yeah,
at first, I would try with the fire authority.
I will.
Before
I'll get
you
ahold-
have it. And
I will.
something else that you keep in mind too, certain times with the conditions, dry conditions, and
Yep.
that, they can't burn. And that's something
that's true.
that's probably going to be the biggest enforcement is with the fire authority. I would think would probably be the conditions and
Okay.
fire ring. I do believe. I don't know. I'm in the village, but I do believe they have the right to check your fire pit and tell you if it
Yeah,
meets
I don't-
requirements too.
Yeah.
So that what we're basically telling you is that Amy doesn't control that, and
Okay.
and the township. That's
Okay.
the fire authority is a separate body, and they regulate that, and that's who you probably. I would get to them before the fire starts and say, hey, instead of me calling you out, you tell me what I can do.
I've done that. I'll go to them tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow
Yeah,
morning.
because we used to burn, open burn, but I know we can't do open burn anymore. It has to be contained.
Right.
So, and I think you can burn leaves, but it has to be contained. That, you say, what?
12-foot rings.
Yeah, that's,
That seems excessive.
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
That does.
yeah.
It's bigger than ours.
You know.
Yeah, we can't do that anymore. I don't believe we can do that anymore.
I would. It would surprise me if they didn't have some restrictions on the size of it.
I know they told me the fire department, Matt told me they did have a burning permit when the fire trucks
But
and everybody
still,
came there.
There's still rules. you
They
have
made
to
them put it
follow.
out.
Yeah. Well,
They did.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has to be the right conditions to burn.
Okay, so I gotta go to them
What
first
is
to
it?
start the ordinance.
Correct.
Right.
Is Hakfa?
Nakfa.
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 They have a facility out on Grange Hall.
Okay.
When you're heading out, the
Yep.
fire authority, that's on the
Yeah.
left-hand side, heading to 75.
Yeah, north side.
That's not fun.
Okay,
If you stop
yeah.
in there, they should be able to give you
That's where Matt
additional
works and the rest of
information.
them.
Yep.
I'll
Correct.
get all that information tomorrow then.
An owner can get a burn permit, but they have to call
Yeah.
the fire department, contact them the day of, and depending on the weather conditions, they'll issue it or not.
Okay,
So there is a method to go through to get that.
sure there is. Okay,
No, they've got to be controlled, and
Yeah.
there's certain rules. And,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, welcome.
Sherry Billington, 3300 Quick Road. Once again, I'm just going to add one more comment to the burning. We had the opportunity to go around to the other side of the neighborhood. They are in the village. We are in the township. That is the line. And the neighbor that we spoke to lives directly behind these people. She's got 2 young kids that have asthma, and she's got to bring them in. Their kids can't even play out there because of the chickens and the burnings and the language. They're not very neighborly, likable to get nice to. We have approached them neighborly, nicely. Hey, we're not telling you what to do, but can we just kind of... And then the belligerence. I've never heard, I'm not a virgin, but I've never heard such language come out of the mouths of these women and their men. It is unheard for. And the neighbor with the 2 kids heard it. She said the whole neighborhood could hear them yelling at us because we called the fire department because the day they were burning, the wind was blowing. Such a big billowing cloud. You could not even see their backyard. It was so thick, so gray. And then 2 weeks ago, they started again, and it went to the backside. And that lady says that they can't even enjoy going in their backyard because they just stand there or sit and they stare at them. They give them the evil eye. Well, we can do whatever we want. There's no laws. There's no rules. Who's going to stop me? This is my concern with the chicken law. No number, no lot size. If you don't give any rules, then nobody is going to behave, and that's why society acts like they do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, I am Denise Cantu from 15600 Falk Road, and I have a happier note to say something about. Maybe a few months ago, I saw on Facebook that they're trying to start up like a senior center up with Carl Richter in Awe. And I thought, woohoo! And I was the first one to write it and say, I'll be the first in line to volunteer. And then time went by and I didn't see what was going on, and I just recently found out that they started it. And I think it's the 2nd week already, and I called Stace and I said, you want to go? And then she's like, sure. And I go, are we going to go as seniors or as volunteers? Because I'm not sure. I mean, I could go as a senior. I'm even 58. I could. So I don't know if I want to go play or go work. Anyways, I just want to say woohoo that we got that going on. And yes, we're going to be up there to help out and join in. And
Volunteers.
Volunteers. Okay, that's what we're doing. Anyways, I love it.
Thank you. Anybody else? You want to step? Oh, you want to come?
Did you want to go?
No, I was pointing at Angela to maybe come up and talk a little bit more about that. Okay. Go ahead, Stacey.
Hi, Stacy Taylor, 15566. Oh, I hate when it's this slow. 15566 Falk Road. No, we didn't fall off the edge of the earth. We just have been trying to work this problem as best as we can. My dilemma every week when I come to these meetings is I don't know where to start. Every folder, every document, you all should know. I mean, I know you know a lot, but so Hubble, Roth, and Clark, 1994. I'm hoping one of the things they asked is one of the primary concerns of the studies which have been prepared evaluating the environmental consequences of the Homestead Estates wastewater treatment plant has been the potential impact of residential phosphorus in the discharge on the waters of Lacey Lake. The drone photos should hopefully allow you guys to get something happening on that. Road Commission, we've been spending a lot of time down there trying to talk to them, and they're very, very, very nice. And the 2 things I like about them is A, they let you speak at the beginning of the meeting. B, they talk to you. They don't just give you 3 minutes and send you back to your corner. So that was kind of a welcome refreshment. What they basically told us when we went and saw them, was it September? Is that they had George Cullis go and talk to him and request the second entrance. And based on the township supervisor requesting that, they approved it. And I get that. So we'd gone to the meeting a couple weeks later, and we're like, well, what about these concerns for safety? And they're like, well, we can't evaluate it. There's no studies to be done. We're just going to approve it, and then if we have to adjust, we'll adjust. Well, that's a really short road. It's a very narrow dirt road with a big ravine that drops off where the wetlands cross up right there where Kelso's house was at the end of where Phase 3 will be. So we went back to the next meeting, and we said, hey, you said you can't evaluate Phase 3 because Meritus hasn't requested it yet. And so I pulled paperwork out and I handed it to him, and I'm like, well, they showed you paperwork and this is what they presented to you, and it says Phase 3 right there. And the fact that the consent judgment, which we gave them a copy of because they had they're like, what do you mean a consent judgment? So there was a little bit going on about that. They're like, well, that doesn't necessarily ensures that they're going after Phase 3. So according to Carlisle, which is our Mr. Carl, I don't know his first name, but it's the township guy. He says 9.5 trips per occupied dwelling per unit is what they use to do the math. Phase 2, that would put 1,814 cars on the road. Phase 3 would put another 2,308 cars. That would put 4,123 cars on Falk Road. There is no way it can handle that. Once that is built on that side with the front side, or the side of the new Phase 2 and Phase 3, those trailers are going to be right there. So where are they going to come up with the room to make it a safe road? So we talked to them. Denise and I, my husband, there's been several of us that have gone and spoke with them. And they said the only way that we can get a study done is to talk to you. I've already spoke to Tony Engelberg and say, we need a study to understand the impact of this on the safety of every citizen that travels East Holly Road, Falk Road, Rood Road. It's going to affect downtown. There's not a lot you can do because of the 2 train tracks right next to the Red Devil. The Department of Transportation supersedes these guys, and then the trains, the 2 trains, those are going to be they have rights above either of the other 2 agencies is what we've been told.
All right, hold on one second. Can I get a motion to give her an extra 3 minutes?
I will move to give her an extra 3 minutes.
Support. Okay, we have a motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The only official paperwork we've gotten from them says the road will not be widened. Okay, what else do I have? There's a couple more things. This is just something that happened in the paper today, Oakland Press. They're trying to do, they're going to do a street assessment hearing on declaration of necessity, Holly Greens Industrial Park 1 and 2, and they're going to get a special meeting to discuss that. I've got a friend that owns 2 businesses there, which is great. I mean, I'm glad they're doing this, but why did they get a special meeting to address the concerns for the safety of the travels? This is a big impact on our community, and I'm really hoping that we can get some answers, not just, well, we'll see what happens and then we'll make it safe afterwards. Consent judgment number 4, Roger Welsh. He was the code enforcer at the time. This is the Lambert letter. Y'all have a copy of this. Paragraph 4 of the consent judgment in hand written is in my copy. It says, nothing herein shall preclude Holly Township from exercising ordinary police powers. I am making the assumption that the handwritten language appears in the filed judgment. In the broad context, we retain power over health and safety issues. There is a lot more there. I know you guys gave me a few extra minutes. I'm really, I'm not trying to cause hassle and problems here. I'm just trying to ensure the safety of the community, the people that travel these roads. I travel that road every day. I know there's going to be problems. The track team just started running on it, so I just saw them out there today, this morning, this afternoon. So there's not just the density. I mean, that's ultimately what it gets down to. The dump, we got some concerns on that. We've got park residents that are losing teeth and hair. Denise's golden retriever mysteriously got very sick and died within 2 days here recently. We've talked to the vet about possibly that's part of the problems, the 2 chemicals that we're working on from the dump. And then this is just really funny, and I just grabbed an armful of stuff before I came from it, but you asked for something about the forestry. This is actually Barbara Jean Goulish's copy of your guys' paperwork, January 11th, 1983. And I believe if you go to page 54 of it, it actually talks about the special land use. And that's the reason I brought it, because the road this is, Falk, is not one of the classifications of the roads that would accommodate the density of what's being built there. But it's on page 54, and it gets in some of your answers about clear cut in the forest. I got to meet with Mark Cornwell a couple days ago, and actually a couple weeks ago before he went on vacation. There's serious concerns about the runoff. I can keep going. I'm asking for you guys to find a way if we can perhaps get a little bit more of an opportunity to speak at depth on things, more of as a presentation to you instead of getting 3 minutes, because I don't want to rush through this because there's too much at stake.
I wanted to ask you a question. You had asked, the Road Commission had made a statement that you needed something from us.
To request a study to understand the potential impact on the community to ensure the safety of all of the citizens that travel the roads, that traverse these roads, because the elementary, the high school, Falk Road, right there at East Holly, the ravine dropping down, it's a 20-foot ravine there. So they said that, we as citizens can't get the response for that. And if you look at the consent judgment, that is one of your powers. It's on the first page. And George was very nice. In fact, I realized when I was looking through this yesterday, he actually gave us some really great information. But you guys can write letters. Article 4 on the consent judgment, I don't know if I brought that with me, but it says that you can write letters to the DNR, Health and Safety, Road Commission, and there's one more agency. Do you happen to remember, sir?
DEQ.
DEQ. So you have the ability to write that because you are only entered into a partial consent judgment. So that was one of the things that the judge actually said, is that because it was only a partial, it still gives you the abilities and the powers to look after the safety and the welfare of the community.
Okay. And would that be the planning commission, or would that be the township board?
He said not to say his name, but the gentleman, he said not to say who he was, but he said to ask. And
Did he say to
I will
ask?
be getting. I asked Tony. That's who I had the first contact with. I have not had the meeting. I had a chance to get with George since then, but it's very hard to get answers when you're just a simple chick that lives on a road where you have letterhead. And the fact that there's letters been written in 90, 92, 94, there's resolutions at the village that Ardith Regan instigated. I presented that to you. I mean, I have boxes and boxes and boxes. I have articles. I mean, there's a lot of concerns, and we're not done. We're still working on it, but we're working at the state level now. We're working to get, because your hands are tied, because you are handcuffed, we are trying to do our best, but we still know that you do have some abilities, and we know you have concerns. We know you're frustrated. We know this is a terrible position, but there's safety and welfare, and that's safety first.
Sure. And you were also asking for time to do a presentation?
A special meeting. Actually, Ruth Johnson was something that I had discussed with her. I've had conversations with Diane Scheib-Schneider, because the waters that are going into her Rose Township. There's a couple agencies that I've got names of that I'm going to be working to contact them. I'm doing everything I can. Obviously, you still have a life and business, but but it's there. There's boxes and boxes and boxes of information.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had
Thank you very much.
my stuff correct. Okay.
Thank
perfect.
you.
Thank you.
It's something I avoided asking, but what stage is this? We've not heard anything from
Yeah.
anybody.
They
for
are.
months.
Well,
They are exploring other avenues. They haven't. They've not. There's nothing. George can correct me if I'm wrong, or Karen. There's no plans for them to come before us anytime soon. So they are exploring other avenues to try and get where they want to go, that do not include us.
Now, the health and welfare, I think that's great
Yeah.
that you're going that route, because that's what we were doing with the
Right.
fire authority, because that was the question, whether they could
Right.
fight fires, and that's exactly
Yeah.
in the road safety. I
That-
really had to question that right from the beginning.
really the only things left to discuss is that,
Yeah.
you know, and if somehow they satisfy the fire authority on it, then it's pretty much game over.
But health
I
and
think.
safety, again, let's go
We
back.
haven't
The
gotten
road
to that
issue
point.
is, I
Right.
thought was a big issue too. I didn't
Well,
know that we could do
that's
much
fine.
with it, but, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the best I can answer, is to say that they are trying to go in a direction to get where they want to go that does not involve having to come before us. So, anybody else? Do you want to say anything about your group? I know that's or anything else,
I
but
can speak on a couple of things. Angie Lemon, 116 College Street. As far as Ted, I'm so glad you guys are doing all the stuff you're doing. Oh.
yeah.
I'm so glad you're doing all the things that you're doing for Ted. When I came on board as a citizen coming to the meetings, you guys were in that master plan type thing, and I went through all of that, and that was really a pleasure. And then Glenn Mitchell came on board, and he kind of stirred things up. But through all of this, like you said, you've worked hard. You've had several meetings, probably more maybe than should have been, but you've done a very thorough job. And I think that was in big part because of what Ted had started. That's not to say you're not doing a good job.
No, it's,
I just think I'm so glad that you are acknowledging the work
Ted
that he's
absolutely
put
set
in.
the bar.
And then next, please join us.
You're hired.
We A lot of people, you, me, just a lot of people have been trying to get a seniors group going. But actually, in all fairness, there has always been a seniors group. It's the Hollyhocks. They still meet, and they will be meeting this Thursday at noon. They always have a potluck lunch the third Thursday of the month. And now they invited us, since we'll be there from 1 to 4 right after them, to come to their potluck, which is kind of unusual because the group has been kind of closed for a while now. That's why nobody knew they were still in existence, but they are. So we are going to go to their potluck, and then we're going to we asked them what activity, on your Thursday, what activity would you like to do? They said they'd like to play bingo. So for our first Thursday with them, that's what we're going to do, is play bingo. Every other Thursday we're going to be meeting, and it'll be up to the group what they want to do. We've, like you said, we've had 2 meetings. The first one we had, I think, 15. The second, 13 or 14. Each time was a totally different group. We've asked them ideas. They would. The big thing they want to do is go on trips. We've got somebody that joined last week that definitely knows about going on trips. From Janie's coffee shop. She's already had a program where she's been doing that, so she's going to help us with that. We don't have an age limit. We specifically did not want an age limit because we want whoever, we had last week some that were not seniors, definitely not seniors, but they like to be around other people and play cards and do whatever. We're open to suggestions of whatever you'd like to do, and please come. There, like I won't be here this Thursday because I'm going to be watching some grandchildren. They're going to be getting off half day early from Fenton schools. Anyways, but we need a lot of help. It's just everybody, and it seems to me the group has been kind of, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And everybody's just kind of taken a piece of the pie, so to say. And whatever their expertise is, Tony is going to maybe have a class type thing for us. He's the
If
first
you guys
one
have
that's
stamp
at.
collectors or coin collectors, and I know a lot of people of that
Yeah,
generation.
yeah. So that's something that's going to happen. We're also talking about maybe having a nighttime meeting, but for right now, that's a no for group consensus. But I'm thinking maybe in the summer, and maybe do whatever, picnics, but trips for sure. What's that ball? Pickleball?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be putting in a pickleball thing. For right now, any information, you can contact Tony Brinker over the parks, Township Parks, or myself, and then there will be other people down the line for information. That's it.
Thank you. Lori? No? All right. Hearing nothing else. One more thing? Yes, sir.
Just to remind everyone that today is the official birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., but next Monday is the holiday, so just to remind everyone, it is a holiday, but let's remember to make it a day on and not a day off. Do something on that day to help humanity. It'd be very much appreciated by everyone. Thank you.
Here. Motion to adjourn?
I like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I will support such motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
I wanted to say
Nobody
so
better
more.
oppose. We close at 8:16. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
I know.
I was trying to trip him up. That's why
I wanted to. It's hard to stop
It
a
is.
habit.
It's almost, yeah.